Phil, man, thank you very much for coming on the show, man. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on board, bro.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
No, it's exciting. I will speak to you a little bit beforehand. It's always exciting for me as an athlete and an aspiring coach to communicate with guys that are on your level that have not only been there and done that, but are helping many different athletes from many different backgrounds get involved. And I'm interested to kind of hop into a little bit of you and the psychology and how kind of the guy that we see today has been formulated through the years. So take me back real quick. Now, you used to play football before you transitioned across, right? Now, was there a foundational sport prior to that football, or was football like life from a young age?
I did martial arts as a kid. So from like 4 to 8 years old, I was engulfed in martial arts. I did Kempo karate and I was a big boxing fan as a kid. But in Florida, in South Florida, where I'm at, football is like the only thing that people think about. So
Yeah.
I started playing that at the age of 7 or 8 years old, I believe. And, I didn't really look back until my college career was over. So, I mean, for a lot of the times, I still like fighting. I still watch boxing. Like, definitely was an avid fan.
Yeah.
But yeah, my sole focus was being able to make it or try to make it to the NFL. And it was like I kind of bypassed. I was like, I remember my uncle when I was I was probably like 13, 14 years old. And he goes, so what do you think you're gonna do with this football thing? And I'm like, what you mean? I'm gonna make it to the NFL. Like there was
No doubt.
there was nothing else. He's like, well, what about college? I'm like, yeah, that's a given. Like we gotta make it to the NFL. Like you know what I'm saying? Yeah,
I'm
well,
gonna get a scholarship. It's cool. Like,
yeah, obviously. But little did I know that it's a little bit harder than just that. Just, oh, we go to the NFL. First of all, I'm not that big of a guy.
I didn't want to bring it up. I didn't want to bring it up. We're gonna go there. It's
5'8".
cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely vertically challenged in that perspective of a football player. So 5'8", 205 pounds now. So I'm wide. So I was like, man, I can't get tall, but I can grow out this way and make sure that I'm maintaining my speed. And the great thing about where I'm at, the environment that I was in, man, I played and practiced with so many good athletes. I was around so many good athletes. My high school football team, we had 3 guys went to the NFL. So I mean, there's a larger pool of talent here in South Florida.
Yeah.
So it was more for me to kind of catch up and make sure that I could put myself out there and be noticed by what I was doing. I mean, I ran a sub 4.540, so that's not that bad, especially for a white guy who's 5'8". So I had to stand out there, and then I could hit. So like, I didn't give a damn about my body. Can I curse on here, by the way?
Of course you fucking
Oh,
can.
so that's my man. So I didn't give a fuck about my body at that point, right? So at the end of the day, I would just ram my head into the other guy's head. And honestly, my major thing was like, how many cuts can I get on my helmet at the end of the season? And that was like an accomplishment for us.
It's that scar
Little did I
tissue of your
know,
stripes on a tiger. Like, yeah.
exactly. Little did I know that that's not that good for your brain. So it'll catch up to me later
I was
on.
gonna say, yeah, it's like the CTE slowly starting to come into play.
Yeah, they didn't. But listen, they didn't teach us. I mean, they really didn't teach us how to tackle. They were just like, put your head down and go for it. And I remember my first concussion. I was probably around. I guess it was like the first practice, and I got one. I was 8 years old, and we did. It was an Oklahoma drill, and I remember. And my best friend was my best friend too. He actually still works for me. He's my video guy now, and we went head to head and just clashed. Looked like two rams. Boom. But that's when I found out that I just didn't give a damn, and I was ready to at least inflict some type of pain on somebody. So, but going further on in high school, I did pretty well there. I got into some trouble as a kid. 16 years old. I ended up having to leave my one school that I was at, and then going and transferring over to another high school, which actually worked out well because that high school that I went to was actually a better high school football team. So I was like, yes, I got to win this team. I almost felt like fucking LeBron in a sense, like going to Miami. but I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, I'm not married to this high school. So, but it was fun because I was the new guy. It was my senior year. I was the new guy, and let me tell you something. I grew up in a pretty rough area. So I'm a little rough around the edges. And you can see that from like some of my older interviews. If you go and you type in like Dean Thomas and Phil Daru ATT PSL interview, you will see that I was like, I don't know if you guys know anything about MMA, but like Mike Perry, like that was me when I was like 19, 20 years old. So I was the first person to have golds, like gold teeth. I was the first person, I was the first kid in my school to have a tattoo, and now everybody's got tattoos. But I remember I was like the trendsetter in that way. But I stood out though because again, Deerfield High School, where I ended up graduating and playing, it was a predominantly black school. So I stood out in that way, and I was one of the, it was a tough, big white boy that they called. You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, I was looking to set my mark, not only in that high school but in the area. And luckily I did so. Just from my work ethic, I think that carries over too as
Yeah.
well. Not the biggest, not the fastest. I was strong. Don't get me wrong. That's why they call me Daru Strong. All right, so that was corny, but don't keep it rolling. So yeah, but no, I actually did. I was pretty strong because I started lifting weights right around 11 and 12 years old
Yeah.
because I was just like, man, I always was one of those guys that wanted to be big, wanted to be strong, wanted to be that guy, in any sport that I was playing. And I played multiple sports, but again, like I said, football was my main thing. And I honestly now looking back at it, being a professional in mixed martial arts, I wish I would have wrestled in high school where the wrestling coach did ask me to join, but the problem was, remember, I'm an undersized linebacker, so I
Yeah.
didn't want to stay in a weight class. Now, if I was bigger at the time, like let's say if I was like 6'2", 6'3", then hell yeah, I'd probably go ahead and wrestle because I got room to grow. I know I'm gonna grow. But when you're looking at recruiters and colleges are looking at you, I can't not get any bigger. So I needed to get bigger and I needed to get faster. So that's when I started to really understand programming and periodization and learning how to train myself. And it started when I was 15, 16 years old. So I used to read a lot of Joe DeFranco and a
Yeah.
lot of West Side articles, and so that's how I got connected with those guys. And now Joe's like a mentor to me. Obviously, Louis is a mentor of mine, and that kind of molded the way I coach now. Obviously, I do some new things, and I pick up
You
on
can
some
see
things
that
that
though. You
my
can see that
athletes.
100% in your
Yeah,
styles and like your exercise choice variations and your cycles and stuff. It's like you can see a lot of that stuff is kind of carried over 100%, man.
yeah. I mean, it's tried and true. I think that
Yeah.
I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel over here. I think that I am trying to navigate what's going to be best for the athlete in their subjective measures, and I think that simplicity is overlooked in a lot of ways. You
My
know,
man, fuck yes.
so and I get it. I mean, a lot of fighters, and I'm talking from my perspective because I
Mhm.
do work with a lot of fighters.
Yeah.
They do like that specificity because they think that it's going to automatically transfer over into the sport. But let's face it, a lot of them are not great movers and they're very novice in the weight room at that. So, first and foremost, we have to develop a base of strength and aerobic capacity and just have that balance there and moving efficiency.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I think that a lot of young strength coaches forget is that you got to set that baseline, man. And just because it doesn't look sexy for Instagram, you know, it has to be done. You know what I'm saying? So stop a lot of, and I have a mentorship program that I mentor like over 300 coaches from around the world. These guys are sharp though. I like what they're doing because they understand the concepts of simplicity first and making sure that
Yeah.
it's efficient and effective. And so what I usually harp on them is like, listen, take something that's very easy to do and make sure that there's maximal intent put behind that. And then you'll get the positive adaptations that you need and set them
Yeah.
up for future things that are going to enhance the qualities of the fight game or whatever sport they're playing, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I always talk about it with my clients. It's like movement with a purpose. It's
Mm-hmm.
like intentional movement through function. It's like I think so many people are so fast to, like you say, they want to get to that sexy stage where they've got like their athletes on Insta squatting 5 plates and fucking screaming down the weights room, and it's like, bro, you don't understand the years of foundational building that should be behind that 5 plate squat, because that 5 plate squat should just be the stepping stone for the next lift. I think it's really, 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 really important we talk about this, and especially with like young athletes as well, that this whole process, I think, I spoke about it when Matt Wedding was on the podcast, talking about how you break it down those stages of learning. The first kind of 15 years of life is like that should be where the foundation is built. And it's like, okay, when you really think about that, you've got guys that are coming to the game that maybe didn't start lifting until they're, I don't know, 16, 17, 18. It's like, motherfucker, you better start being real humble with your weights right now, otherwise you're going to be putting yourself in some precarious situations further down the line.
and you also got to think like, okay, they started lifting weights, but how did they really start lifting weights the right way?
Yeah.
Like
This
you
fucking
might say, oh, I've
deadlifting,
been
like,
lifting, I've been lifting for 5 years, but honestly, you've been lifting for negative 5 years. Is that you haven't
yeah,
really done the
I'm gonna
right
have to
thing? So,
regress all this shit.
yeah. So so I do like a basic assessment. Like I want to make sure that they're moving efficiently. And I got this one. This is funny because I just had him on my podcast. Corey, what's his name? I can't say his last name, but he's I can't pronounce it. My bad, Corey. But he's the head strength and conditioning coach for the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah.
And he actually has them just basically sit down and stand up, and he watches them because he trains basketball players. They're fucking lengthy as shit.
Yeah.
But me,
That's me.
my guys will get up very efficiently because they're movers on the ground. But I also want to see dysfunction. I want to see imbalances. Where do they usually favor? That's going to be a key concept because, again, a lot of these guys are fixed in those one-dimensional positions, and then they end up having these compensation patterns over time. And then when a lot of guys, and it depends on the person. Obviously, it depends on their background.
Yeah.
You got jujitsu guys that are way different than boxers. You got judo guys that are way different than wrestlers in some cases, right? Because the wrestlers, they're more crouched down. They're more of a knee bender, where judo, they're upright, right? So it definitely plays a role in how you program. And then again, you have to look at it like, what are they getting inside of their skills training? And then from there, we got to take what they're not getting and get that efficient, right? So I got to work on the things that they're not doing inside of their skills training because I can control that. It's a controllable environment. And then we just plug gaps from there.
And meanwhile, in the background, what no one else is realizing is that these kids are then hitting like 3-4 game sessions a week on top of everything as well. And it's a really interesting topic that I wanted to come on to. Like, as a coach, obviously, it's very, very much a balanced game. And it's a balanced game with every single individual athlete, because every individual athlete will have its own recovery time. It will have exercise movements that it favors, that it needs less recovery from, etc., etc., etc. But when you have kids that are coming in, it's like, okay, we have this foundation that we need to create, we have this offset that we need to rectify, and we've got to keep you healthy for the 3 games, the game sessions you're going to have during the week, and you're fucking playing at the weekend. As a coach, how are you doing that in that environment? Because that's, I mean, that is like, it's the fucking holy grail, right? If you nail that, then you've got the perfect athletes.
Yeah, I mean, looking at recoverability history is key for me. How well that they can recover from game to game, from practice to practice, from session to session. And then I like to use acute chronic workload too as well, from the weeks to the month. On top of that, if you wanted to go technology based, you can use an HRV monitor too as well. I think HRV is a good tool. Like I said, you need to be able to develop a coach's eye and communicate with the athlete too as well. I mean, a lot of I'll go into one rant. That's it. A lot of these coaches relying on too much technology to dictate the training programs and to dictate the training sessions. It's like that's why they can't communicate well with the athlete. That's why they can't auto-regulate properly, because you don't see what you see. Like, you don't even know what you don't know.
Yeah.
At this particular time, you need to step back. Let the technology be one tool.
It's a biomarker,
Yes. At the same time, you need to develop the art of coaching, which is your ability to communicate properly, which is your ability to watch a situation and assess that situation in real time. So when I have these interns come in, I'm looking and I'm writing stuff on the board, right? And basically I'm like, okay, this is what the system is called for to do today.
Yeah.
Now, when I throw an audible in there, it fucking boggles their mind. They're like, but that's not what happened on the board. I said, I don't give a fuck what's on the damn board. You do what we got to do to get what's necessary for the athlete, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
but that's testament to a good coach, though. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you've got an athlete that's coming in, you're like, okay, we're programmed to do like these X, Y, and Z movements today. That they come in, they're slightly beaten up, they jump underneath a fucking safety squat bar, and you just see that their form's like shit, and you're like, well, that's that fucking session out the window, because we need to change this fucking dysfunction right now. Otherwise, the next 45 minutes that we're spending on is going to be for shit, because we're just going to be reinforcing a crap movement pattern.
Well, so, even then, I still believe in you gotta let the dogs eat, right? So at the end of the day, I'm still gonna give them something that they can do to elicit that stimulus response.
Yeah, yeah,
Whether, even if it's an overcoming isometric in a mini max, right? Let's say, for instance, a mid thigh rack pull, right, into pins. That's fine. We're gonna get some force production out of that. On top of that, though, we do need to do some correctives and make sure that we're giving them more frequency in that exercise,
yeah,
slow down that exercise, put less weight on that exercise, and then improve the motor patterns accordingly. So now we're putting them in the position to do more load, more intensities down the line. So again, you can't stop the progress, but you still need to make sure that you're increasing all these other demands at the same time, right?
yeah, yeah. And I think it's again that case of communicating with your athletes, and as a coach having that keen eye to kind of see when they're coming off of like the back of good peaks and things are moving well and their performance is going up
Mm-hmm.
in the sport, for you to take a step back, and rather than being like, hey, fucking look at how good I am, look at how big my dick is, it's like, okay, actually, yeah, we're in a good place right now, but
Yeah.
I think we can tweak this up. I still think we can pull this in. I still think that we can edge like that a little bit more out of your VO2. Like I think that's a really, really important factor. And do you think? I think I kind of already know the answer there. Is that just through sheer experience and getting in there and working in those teams?
I mean, 100%. I think that you need, as a coach, first of all, you need to have experience with other athletes, with all different types of athletes, and as a lifter, as a fighter, or as an athlete. I always say fighter now because I work with so many, but as an athlete, getting in there and feeling that bar, feeling the movement, understanding, having proper proprioception, kinesthetic awareness in every movement pattern, because you never know what's going to happen inside a game or a fight or whatever. So that's why I followed along the lines of conjugate, more so because that constant variation is going to put them or get them strong in all these other positions so
Yeah,
that there
yeah,
is no weak points. But yeah, getting back to that, I think that a lot of coaches, they come straight out of college, or they come, off of out of university or off an internship. The goal really is to make sure that, one, you are communicating, you are seeing things from all different angles, and you're working with so many different athletes from so many walks of life. That was the great thing about, like, when I started. I used to work with a lot of general pop when I was fighting, because that I needed to make money, right? So I'm like, all right, what the fuck is going on? You can't even squat right now. So, like, I'm like, all right, and I'm working, and I'm talking about, I work with kids as young as 7 years old to grown men, old men,
yeah.
as old as like 76, right? And honestly, there's no real big difference other than the fact that the age gap is there, but movement efficiency is not here anymore. You know what I mean? Because we get put in these fixed positions. What do? You go to, you go to work, you sit in a desk, you get in your car, you drive home, you probably lay down. That's it. That's all you got, right? You never
Sit in front of
pass.
TV. Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Yeah. Your posture's all fucked up. Your hips don't have proper mobility. Have proper external rotation, internal rotation. You can't move at all. Like, your thoracic spine is fucked, right? And then from there, what do? They compensate. So now you have compensation patterns. You ends up having obviously injuries down the line. So
Yeah,
that we gotta get back to being able to move efficiently. And I think
yeah.
that's one thing. That's the starting point. And then from there, you can optimally load and go from there.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I find it really, really interesting that you kind of talk about the fact that you love to use that conjugate method, because I think especially when you look at the broad spectrum of what each kind of individual sport is really requiring from you, to come up with a strength-based system that really kind of ticks a lot of those boxes across the board at once is a fucking tough job to do. And this is why I find more and more interesting the more I learn about conjugate, the more people I kind of have the experience to chat to about it, it seems to be this really multifunctional tool for a lot of coaches to be able to work with pretty much anyone,
Yeah.
just varying load, exercise selection,
Sure.
accommodative resistance, etc., etc.
And I wish I could show you this board right here. Can you flip the board over for me? So, like, I usually train. My main guys right now are all combat sports related. I do have some high school football players, and we have some youth baseball players too as well. But it all is conjugate. What is conjugate? It's constantly varying exercises, intensities, volumes, right? And Louis says it all the time. It's like, you change your clothes. Your clothes are conjugate. Like I'm like, right? You have to constantly change the cause of stimulus adaptation to occur because you're going to accommodate. And the goal is to never delineate. We don't want to detrain any aspect of performance, especially for athletes, right? So like if you guys can see here, I don't know if you can really see it, but
Yeah, I'm
so I
seeing that.
got so there is just a basic outline of a 4 week cycle for your max effort lifts, and then I have my three-week pendulum waves for dynamic effort.
Yeah.
And I'm picking the exercises that are going to have the best dynamic correspondence for that particular sport, for that athlete. But again, it's very simple, right? You have, I think what I have on there, my main lifts that I love to utilize is, and we're talking about indicator lifts, something that's going to have quote unquote a KPI, right?
Yeah.
So I have the sumo deadlift, and I know Matt likes the sumo deadlift a lot, right? I like the sumo deadlift with my athletes, especially for boxing, judo, and MMA, because you get lateral force displacement. So now I'm activating the hips, I'm activating the
Yeah.
abductors because they need to be in and out, right? They need to have that ability to create torque, right? And
Yeah, and
produce.
hold that tension through the floor throughout, especially if you're grappling, anything like that. You're being able to hold that center of gravity, being strong in that position. Yeah, 100%, man.
And through experience, right, I found that my guys have a stronger back than they have stronger hips, believe it or not, because their hips are so tight, it enables the ability to produce force from the hips. So now getting them out in that wide position, right, that will help with hip dexterity. That'll increase their range of motion, which will increase the ability to produce that force and absorb force. So I'll do things like a sumo deadlift. We obviously will do box squatting, 14-inch box, whatever parallel we want to go.
Yeah.
And I'll change the bars up, right? For the bench press, we don't really do full bench press. Obviously, I'll do a close grip bench press, or I'll do a floor press, or I'll do an incline bench press, something like that. But again, I also like to do seal rows, right? So I'm one of those guys that like, man, listen, whatever we can do to test that's going to have that the greatest ability to be effective, but also super efficient, let's do it, right?
Yes.
I'll even do a maximal effort seal row,
I
believe it
love
or not,
that.
right? And so what I'll do is I'll set those base marks, right? I'll set those baselines and benchmarks, and then from there we'll just take the percentages, we load it appropriately. Now, for me, and this is what I go through in my mentorship course, but for me, I'm gonna do weeks 1 through 4, right? But that fourth week, I do want to give them more reps, so I do want to increase the frequency there.
Yeah.
Now, if they are highly efficient, like my boxers now have been with me for almost 5 years. So they're very efficient now because I've been constantly cueing them, and they've been working the system. So
Yeah.
now we have the ability to work in those higher ranges, those higher intensities, those 1 rep max intensities,
Yeah.
because they have the technical efficiency to do so, right? They have the inter and intramuscular coordination. Now we can have some fucking fun,
Yeah.
right? And that's where you're gonna see you're going to see force production being increased, but also the rate of force production, which is very important for a sport like boxing. So again, we want to be able to produce that force as fast as possible. Now, with MMA, these guys are training so many things at once throughout the weeks. So for them, they're not as efficient in the lifts because there's so much less frequency that I can do with them, right? Sometimes I only have guys 2 times a week, if that. And then a lot of these guys don't live in the area. So they'll come, like I got Joanna and Jacek, she lives in Poland. So like for her, the great thing is that I have her strength coach. He does similar things that I do, and she gets a GPP base. When she comes in, then she's good to go.
She knows
But
as well, yeah.
yeah, but a lot of my guys don't have that ability, right? And let's face it, man, like I can give them the program, but they're not gonna do it the way we want them to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I get back and then I have to rewire things, and I have to again do some things that are going to enhance the quality of the athlete, make sure we're getting that stimulus, but again, make it very simple for them to do. So, but that's the basic system, and for that's going to be more in season, in camp style, but the off camp is solely predicated on building up GPP and building up an aerobic base and building up local muscular endurance, because let's face it, in a fight, like in any sport, right, we need to be able to cover all aspects. We need to be able to build that base like I was talking about earlier in the show.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so funny because, like, even from an MMA standpoint, I mean, it literally to an extent, I'm hearing the echoes of Matt Wenning and everything that you're saying and everything that you do. In the respect of that whole off season, you know, he hammers on about GPP, but GPP obviously through the full powerlifting conjugate system being just like a shit ton more volume, a shit ton more frequency, slightly lighter weights, and just blowing everything up, getting that physical preparedness just up through the roofs. Then when you start to come into that hypertrophy phase and then that strength phase, shit, man, you just get to a point where you're like repping your 1 rep maxes from the last cycle because your body is in such a good physical condition because you've taken that time. Which again, it's like, you know, if it feels like you're hammering your head into a brick wall sometimes, but like telling those athletes to be like, okay, motherfucker, let's just take a step off. Let's get your body where it needs to be. Let's get you fit and get you functional. And then all that shit that you want to do right now, you're gonna be so much better at it. Like just
100%. Yeah, and again, you're reducing the risk of injury. I'm not gonna say you're gonna totally negate it, but you are reducing the risk.
It for sure.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I powerlift now, and when I started doing powerlifting, like my guys, and I didn't coach myself. I can't do that shit, right? Because I'll go crazy. Like I'll do too much, right? So I had my guys kind of program for it, and they ran a basic block, right? But the block was, you know, it was constant. It was the same exercise over and over again. Then I ended up getting, you know, knee tendonitis or patella tendonitis, elbow tendonitis, just a bunch of overuse injuries, right? So I was like, damn, okay, well, here's the goal, and I know conjugate works. So I went back to that, and now no nagging injuries. You know, obviously I can't stop the fact that when I was in jiu-jitsu, obviously I don't know if you know, I have an ACL tear.
Yeah,
But,
dude, motherfucker, I'm getting right onto that in a bit. Don't you worry, we get stuck in there.
But that's a different story, right? That's trauma. That's
yeah.
how
you know.
But an overuse injury should never happen if you're programming the correct way and you're auto regulating and deloading the proper way. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, I think that with all the wear and tear on an athlete each day from just practice, right? And then you throw in the games there, and then you throw in outside stresses. Remember, stress is systemic. So at the end of the day, I got to make sure that I'm, again, giving them the most of what they need, but also minimizing that risk of overtraining, of fucking, you know, overdoing a certain movement pattern, and just again, keeping them safe throughout the time that they need to be successful, you know?
Yeah, and I find it very, very refreshing as well to kind of hear you use the terms like overtraining and stuff. Like, I know there are a lot of guys out there that are like, there's no such thing as overtraining, yada yada yada. Like in like a powerlifting, weightlifting environment, like to an extent, I can kind of get it.
No, for sure, for sure.
But when you're talking about athletes, like motherfucker, I've been there. So I played a very high standard rugby all my life. I was county. I was in a professional academy from the age of 13 to 18 and trialed internationally, but 5 minutes before my trial I had torn my posterior cruciate ligament. So yeah, I did that. I've done some ACL damage. My meniscus is all fucked up. So
how did that happen though? Like
that was in training. So I was training with my club team on a Thursday night. I got a really nasty tap tackle from behind, and I just felt like my knee wasn't 100% right. And I was like, oh, okay. So I played on the Saturday on like ultra dry ground. I just got like block tackled from behind. My shin hit the floor and my patella just like kept on going. And I was like, oh, like try to get up, just couldn't fully extend my leg, couldn't put any weight on. I was like, I'll run this off. This is gonna be fine. It's okay. And just sat on the 5 meter line, like, please, no one come in my channel because I can't move for shit right now. And after that, I was like, okay, coach, you need to get me off. You need to get me out of here, man. Do you know what I mean?
You know what, man? I have so much respect for rugby players, man. I feel like they're like a cross between MMA and football. You know what I mean? Like a mindset, and also, believe it or not, it's like the energy systems are similar too, from mixed martial arts to rugby. You know, I had an intern of mine who played for Wales, and then he moved out here, and then I had another guy that also played in the UK, and these guys, man, like anything I threw at them, it was like, what else you got for me, coach? Like, and they're from overseas, you know, so they were hard nosed, man. They were ready to get after it, which kind of reminded me a lot of those guys, those young, hungry MMA guys. So it was cool to really work with those guys, you know. But,
yeah, it's very, very interesting, and kind of going back to what we're kind of saying there with the injuries and whatnot. I think again, like to an extent, I feel like, especially as a coach now, I feel like I have learned so much through my injuries. Like
Yeah,
to this extent, like I've got
100%.
loads of fucking impact damage from years of rugby, fucked up obviously like knees, ankles, various different things. The amount of time I spent on the physio table when I was younger was just crazy. But
Yeah.
the fact is now is that as a coach I can come into it and I can be like, okay, motherfucker, I know what's coming here because I've seen this before. We need to correct this. We need to get this working. And then when you do it and people see results, they're like, you're a fucking wizard. It's like, no, 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 no. Like, I've just been broken as shit my whole life. You don't
Yeah, yeah,
understand,
yeah.
man. So,
No,
like,
man, it's so funny, bro. Cause like I got guys like that have years in the game. You know what I mean? And like a guy by the name of King Mola Wall. He's a Bellator fighter, right? This motherfucker, man, I tell you right now, he's had about 7 knee surgeries. He gave me more information than any doctor could ever give me. You know, I'm like, how the fuck did you? He's like, man, once you have this many injuries, you kind of figure it out. You know, so I look at it as a blessing. When I tore it, I was like, I mean, I was pissed, but I was like, all right, let's take the opportunity, let's make it a positive, and let's learn from this situation because now I want to be a better coach because now I can again identify what we need to do if it ever does happen, and we can mitigate it if I feel it's going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, definitely, you got to kind of go through the fire in a bit, and that's why I think that I hate to say it, but like with you being you playing rugby, do you coach any of the rugby guys now?
so yeah, I coach a few rugby players, yeah.
Yeah, so like the buy-in there probably is way higher than somebody who's never fucking put on a rugby uniform and stepped on the field.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like the guys with me is like, yo, I fought before. I continue to train. I actually fucked up my knee training. You know, it's funny because like I've had 8 years of professional fighting. 8 years of professional fighting. I trained for 10 years at a competitive level, and I do old man fucking gi jujitsu and end up tearing my ACL. This is some shit.
Dude, but it's always the way, isn't it? Like the amount of people that I've spoken to that have like just jacked up their backs from doing like the most mundane shit. And it's like, yeah, they're like they do motocross, they do fucking like calisthenics and shit. And they're like, oh man, like I got out of my car the other day and I slipped a disc. And you're like, motherfucker, how?
I
What?
know, right? Oh, how old are you, by the way?
So I'm 26.
You're 26. So when I turned 30, I didn't know that people were telling me like, man, you're gonna start to feel it. Don't let them tell you this shit, right? Because you're mentally already like, fuck, I'm old. I'm getting old. Your body's breaking down,
Yeah.
right? Especially guys like us who's been competing since we were kids. The miles are there. You know what I'm saying? So now I'm like, damn, man, I can't recover the way I used to. I can't do the shit I got to think about when I fucking go to do a broad jump now. I can't be doing all this. So, but you know what that does though? That sets you up to give information to the young guys based off of your experiences.
But do you know what's so funny, man? You know what's so funny? It's like as a kid, it's that whole cliche thing where like you've got that like older sensei figure that's like, listen, these are the things that you need to do. You need to look after your body, dude. As a young teenage kid, where you're all jacked up on that testosterone, you don't want to listen to that motherfucker ever. And like now we're in that position where we're like, oh shit, if only we listened. And now we're trying to be that guy.
Yeah, I don't know if I was like that to a degree, but I definitely knew that I definitely thought that I was indestructible for sure, 100%. Like I thought I was fucking superhuman. I mean, I'm still kind of superhuman in a way. I feel like I'm bouncing back faster, so I'm gonna say I call myself a mutant, and if I keep that going, maybe I won't feel as old. You know what I'm saying?
Manifest it, bro. Just keep saying it. Manifest it. Let's go.
It has to be done. It has to be done. Shit. My son's trying to get in me.
So with the whole ACL thing, like I think it's very, very interesting. Like as it happened, like do you feel that you just had more of a hyper awareness around it, around your athletes post tear, like that you maybe didn't necessarily have before? You're like just looking for things a little bit more, or do you kind of feel like you're like, it is what it is. It's a part of the package, especially in like MMA. You're looking at ground combat sports, dude. The amount of tears in like knees, shoulders, elbows, with all the talk and stuff you got going on, it's pretty common. So where did you kind of come from with that?
Man, you know what? It's very hard, man, because with the sport like that, you're getting kicked, you're getting punched, and a lot of guys they usually get hurt in more of like honestly in more of like wrestling and grappling than they do in sparring At least from my perspective with the elite guys, because they know how to take care of each other. But you
Yeah, it's
got
like that
guys.
white collar shit where people are just swinging haymakers in the fucking sparring. Do you know what I mean?
It's super controlled, unless guys are like they're agreeing on, yeah, we're getting fucking after it, and then it's like, oh shit. But at the same time, even with me, even if I went hard in sparring, I never really got like structural damage from that. Like, but
Yeah,
there was always something gone wrong in wrestling, in grappling, because those transitions and those scrambles, and that right there, just from you just trying to be explosive and move quick to get an advantage or a good position, that will put your body in a bad position, or in a disadvantageous position to cause certain injuries to happen. So I see that more so. And what I go back to it. I know I don't want to sound like a fucking broken record, but improving on your movement, improving on your awareness is very key. When I started to implement more of like FRC principles and increasing mobility and active in range, and then doing some more like animal flow movements and almost DNS style principles, like the athletes were coming to me and they were telling me like, coach, I knew that I was in a bad position, so I redirected, and like I could really feel myself be more stable. And like they don't really even understand or comprehend the fact that what stability really is. Or they're just
yeah,
like, it feels good though. Like I feel like I'm ready to do something. And that's a good thing, because that's how when you get that feedback, it doesn't matter. And I go back to this too, because young coaches, they harp on this, and they keep, I guess they keep this as gold in some ways, is having that statistical data is very important, right? It's good to show, right? But at the end of the day, I don't give a fuck how well you went up in your max lifts, or how well you increase your VO2 or your lactate threshold. If you lose a fight or you lose a game, that shit don't matter, bro. Like, I'm sorry, but the skills coaches don't give a fuck about that shit. If you don't look good in a fight, even though you had all your numbers go up, and I've
yeah,
had that I've had that happen a few times where I'm like, I'm scratching my head like, what the fuck just happened? You know, it comes down to that. So they have to give you that feedback, and I have to see them do really well in their sport specific sparring and drilling and practice, because that's real dynamic correspondence right there.
yeah.
That's a real KPI. So, the goal for us is, again, put them in the right positions to be successful whatever sport they play.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. I absolutely love that, man. It's so so true. You know, you can't be reliant on that data all the time, and I think a lot of people, they like to use it because it seems sexy. It seems like they know what they're doing when they can harp on about all the numbers, and it's like, well, okay, actually, motherfucker, this is going to transition to a point.
Yeah.
But then you need to make sure that everything on the other end is receiving all of this good data that you're putting into it. And it's like, okay, well, if it isn't coordinating and you're getting a fucking victory out of the fight, then you've got to strip back and ask yourself, okay, do I need to be pushing this to make this number look good, or actually do I need to just increase your function of your hips a little bit more?
Yeah. And I go, it's funny because like my main guys, my really elite, my world champions, they're not that great in the weight room. They might be shit in the weight room, actually, to be honest with you. But I know what I need to give them in order for them to win the fight. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? And whatever I can, bring to the table, whether it could be mobility, it could be, whatever, it could be kinesthetic awareness, it could be building up a little bit of strength in certain positions and in accentuation phases, right? But at the end, I'm like, okay, we won that fight. That's a victory. Let's go. Let's go from there, right?
yeah.
Now, on the flip side, I have guys that really, really are monsters in the weight room, and they get in the cage or they get in the ring, and you're like, man, what the fuck just happened? You just got mauled, like you know what I'm saying? But I've seen that actually in football too, in any sport really. It's like, I think because they put a main focus on that, and they're not really paying attention to their overall skill, and I know that sounds kind of weird coming from the physical prep or the strength and conditioning guy,
Yeah,
but again, we're also athletes too. You know what I'm saying? And we
exactly.
competed, and we know that again, it definitely helps. Don't get me wrong. Like this gives them the X factor, right? If
Right.
you have guys that are equally talented, if you throw on a little bit of strength, a little bit of power, increase mobility, increase that range of motion, speed, agility, all of that, that's going to give them the edge. So now that's where we come in. In my sport, you have to have a large amount of conditioning in all aspects, whether it be
A
cardiovascular.
fuck ton.
Yeah. So, but again, I like what you know. I like what a couple of coaches have been talking about recently, and and I'm talking skills coaches, and these guys are saying like, for the most part, in skills training, they need to be doing some conditioning in there, and I'm talking about true sports specificity.
Yeah.
Because now, what is sports specificity? It's fucking playing your fucking sport, dude. So, all right, so now, all right, so they're getting conditioning from an ultimately, a directed correspondence, right? They're going in there, they're sparring hard. That's where they're going to get that conditioning that they're going to feel inside the fight. So for me, I need to, okay, what did you do in sparring? How did you feel? What energy systems did you work on? Okay, what didn't you work on? We're going to do that, right? So we plug the gaps now, and that is very important when you're getting closer to a fight, because now skills training and specificity become the hierarchy of importance.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, now I know. Okay, you've done X amount of rounds in wrestling or MMA sparring, right? It's highly glycolytic. So stop fucking doing, lactate circuits all year round. That's no fucking doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know and now it's not as bad, I think, because a lot of people put it down. It's like almost like the foot ladder. Everybody puts that down now. So a lot of people have shied away from that. They don't even want to put that out there. But I know some people still do. And
Yeah.
In all actuality, when I'm trying to get local muscular endurance and I'm trying to improve, like, lactate buffering, I'll do some of that. You know what I mean? But that is because they probably didn't get that inside of skills training.
Yeah.
Right? So if they didn't go to wrestling practice that week, okay, well, now I got to plug that gap. Yeah. So now we'll do some stuff. But the great thing, though, between wrestling and doing it in a controlled environment, I control the variables. So now I know exactly how much of volume you need.
Yeah.
I know that you're not going to get injured because, again, like I said, when you're that fatigued and you have that much lactate buildup, you're gonna do some shit that's not as technically sound.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And then we start rolling the dice.
And that's why I said with the grappling and the wrestling, because it's highly glycolytic, you have more injuries in that particular realm and that method of training.
Yeah, 100%. Now I'm really interested to get onto it because I know, as a coach, and especially even from a business standpoint, you're someone that is always about upping your game. You're always about being on the next wave coming through and being ahead of the curve. So, as a coach who has done incredibly well and is doing incredibly well with some very, very high end athletes, where are you then reaching your source info from? Where are you reaching out to? Which avenues are you going down? And for you as a coach, where are you taking those like big sources of inspiration to be like, okay, right, I know that these aspects of my coaching are absolutely sound, but I know that this person or this methodology is maybe getting that extra 2% out in this area that I would then want to try and employ.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I do like to go back to the old Soviet texts, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's things that like I've learned so much, and I constantly try to learn every day that I forget a lot of shit too. So I have to go back. Like as I'm sitting here, man. Like I have Science of Sports Training. I have old Verkhoshansky books. Like, well, we got Medvedev, we got Verkhoshansky. I got obviously I have Science of Practice and Strength Training sitting next to me. So I always go back to that, almost like the Bible. You know what I mean? And super training, the same thing. You got to go back to that shit like 4 or 5 times just to get it. But, I have books all over the place. And then I'll go and I'll see guys that I know that have done it really well. And then I'll converse with them. And the great thing about having social media now is that we can connect on any level, right? I can DM a coach at the highest level and be like, what do you think about this? Or has this worked for you and your guys? And then from there, like networking is very important at this time. So I think if you're a young coach, man, don't be afraid to network and find a mentor that's going to help you, can kind of guide you in a way. And as far as sources go, like, I mean, anything on the internet now, you can Google anything. So that's the one thing that a lot of the older coaches didn't have, which I feel bad for them because now we're ahead of the game. You can learn any fucking thing now.
It's a fucking 1,000 times easier for us than it ever was for those guys.
Oh, sure, dude. So certifications are cool. Like the reason why I like to do certifications, to be honest, in seminars and stuff and attend them is one, for the networking opportunities. And then two, I get to do some hands-on stuff, which is very important for me because I'm more of a physical learner. If you're an athlete, I feel like anybody.
Dude, literally, it's like I'm fucking listening to myself right now, like 100%. Like I can't, like there's only so much I could be like looking at a book and like writing out flashcards and stuff before I'm like literally someone fucking tie up a noose right now because I can't take it. Like I need to get in that space, I need to get underneath that, I need to be moving, and I need my body to feel it because then as an athlete, I can then kind of use that transformation skill into the coaching realm to be like, okay, I know how this feels, I know how this should look, I know that you don't look anything like that, and this is now what we've got to do.
I mean, you got to practice it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't show something, you can't tell somebody to do something you ain't never fucking do it.
Yeah.
Like that to you faking the funk. You can't do that shit. So like,
there's a lot of people out there, dude. There's a lot of people out there that are though.
You know what's funny, man? Is like, I do seminars. You know, I well, not right now, but I do seminars around the world. And last year I did like 12 countries, right? And not to knock anybody, but the coaches, when we did like my basic dynamic warm up, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how are you gonna show this to your athletes? You can't even do it. Like, so you really, I mean, now to their defense, it was a new movement, so I'll give them that. But like, damn, bro, come on, coaches, let's get more coordinated here. You know what I'm saying? And some of them do. Some of them are really good movers, and don't get me wrong. And some of them can fucking lift. And I think that's another thing. I think a coach needs to get underneath the barbell. If you're going to teach somebody how to be strong, you need to learn how to get strong yourself. You know, and that was one thing that Louis taught me a long time ago. It's like, man, you can't fucking tell somebody or, you know, preach to people about how strength is gonna, you know, dictate all when you fucking are weak as a kitten. You know what I mean? So I think that's one thing. And on top of that, when you talk about buy-in, when I go out there and I compete, or when they see me in the gym and I'm lifting, man, that gives them the stability in life to be like, you know, my coach actually does this shit and he's strong as fuck. I'm going to listen to him, not only because I know he knows what he's doing, but he does it himself and he does really well with it. So that's where, again, young coaches, I'm going to tell you right now, if you're trying to get buy-in with your athletes, man, do the work that you are, you know, showing them to do, you know, or programming it in.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I completely agree, man. I completely agree. I love that. So, like, after the back of moving out of rugby, I did a short stint in athletics, and I've now moved across into strongman. So I'm now in the next kind of 2 years, hopefully looking to be at a position to be earning my pro card. So I'm super pumped for that. But it's like it's fantastic. Like, I was trained by literally some of the best rugby and fitness coaches in the fucking world, man. It was absolutely insane, and I've done sessions that I don't wish on my worst enemy, man. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I have been to hell and back several times, and it is not a pleasant journey. But the fact is that I then know in my heart of heart when I'm putting someone underneath that load or underneath that weight, and I'm like, you need to feel this strain. You need to feel what it feels like to strain under that load to condition your body, because you don't know it yet, but your body can do this shit. And it's not until you get under there and you go, I didn't die. Maybe there is something to this shit. And you're like, there you go. But for most coaches, when they put someone underneath load and they haven't experienced that, and they're like, oh no, it's like, okay, well, actually, to an extent, maybe you're not actually giving your athletes the range that they need to develop in, because there are going to be some athletes, not every athlete, but some athletes that need to experience that and be in that, especially for particular given sports.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, again, I'll go back to it because I got the interns in here now, and it's like they don't know load management, like, because of the fact that a lot of them haven't got under a bar for a long enough time. So like, they'll be like, all right, you'll make your jumps, like you make your standard jumps, and they'll fucking make these astronomical jumps, and I'm like, yo, you didn't see him struggle with that fucking 94 pounds on the damn
chuck
bar,
another
bro.
45 on, let's go, baby.
What made you think that was gonna happen? Like, because it didn't. You know what I'm saying? So, but you only know that when, and then again, it's like you can identify when something's gonna go wrong. You know what I'm saying? Because you've been there. So you're like, hold on, stop. You're like, all right, let's get braced. All right, let's lock this down. And you get behind them, you get it going.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, with my athletes now, it's like I'll have to always make sure if they're going for like a PR, if they're hitting like 1 rep max or something like that, where there's a huge amount of load, I'm always behind them because they feel super secure now. You know what I'm saying? because they know that for a fact that if shit goes wrong, I got them. You
But
know what I'm
also
saying?
doubly, you're breathing down their fucking neck and you are in their ear as well. And that is also that's something to be said, that when you're in that position and you've got that coach or that person that you respect that's in your ear that's like, motherfucker, you better get up out of that hole. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
time to add that extra 5-10% that I didn't quite think was in there.
It's an excitatory response, right? So if I'm gonna go ahead and I know that a guy did, let's say, a double and it was slow as shit, but I know he has the strength to do more, I'll get behind him and that shit shoots up like it ain't nothing. And I'm like, oh, so what happened? Oh,
Yeah, dude, I did the
oh,
same shit. I'm like, oh, welcome to the session, motherfucker. Nice for you to join us.
good morning, motherfucker. I see it, man. I'm like, hey, listen, you just need a little bit of testosterone behind you. That's all. That's it.
Let's go, baby. Oh, cool. Okay, man. Like I'm really interested to ask this. I wrap up the show the same way with everyone. I ask the same question, and everyone comes at it from a slightly different angle. So just be you. So for a second, I want you to imagine that you are stepping into a time machine. And you're going to go back in time, and when you get there, you are greeted by your younger self, 10, 11, 12 years of age. You have your whole life ahead of you. You have all of these struggles, these journeys,
Yeah.
these hardships that you're going to have to go through in your life. And you get to spend a few moments with your younger self, and you can impart a bit of wisdom, some knowledge, a mantra, a way to live by. What do you give to your younger self to help them navigate through those fucking strange tides to the place of which you have created the success and wealth that you currently have today? What are you giving to them?
You know, one thing I would always tell even the younger guys that I'm working with now is you have to develop the ability to organize your life appropriately. And the reason why I say this is because I didn't have a large amount of guidance when it comes down to that. So like I would be here and be here. Look, listen, I'm very, very like I'm aggressive. I'm an aggressive person. I want to get a lot done. I feel like at the end of the day, I'm willing to do work and I'm willing to work hard. So that never was something that I had to talk myself into. But what I would say was that organizational planning was something that I lacked very, very badly. And it was to the point where I had to renegotiate everything that I was doing and reevaluate every system that I was trying to utilize. So from there, I would tell myself, listen, young sir, you need to fucking organize your goddamn life, right? Get it together. But I would say this and I would give them the tactical response, how to actually do this. Not just tell them, because at the end of the day, I could tell somebody to do something, but then they're like, well, how do I do it? So you have to make sure you give them those tactics. And what I usually do now, and I still do this to this day, is I organize my day the night before, right? And I do it the night before because there's going to be things that are going to be important that'll come up. And that was the one thing that fucked me up because I tried to do it as let's say, a younger adult, let's say in my 20s. But I'm like, man, shit comes up and I have to do this and it takes me away from my plans. But I would plan this out like a month in advance. You can't plan that, especially with things going on nowadays. It's like if you got multiple things going on, you better be able to, one, be able to adapt first and foremost. But you need to make sure that you can close down that gap of when you're actually going to organize your time. So I'll make sure that night before I know exactly the tasks at hand that need to get done at a certain amount of time. And I use, Parkinson's law, like you got to get it done at this amount of time for this amount of, for whatever time frame that we have, it needs to get done at that particular time. And that becomes the sole focus point. So, and another thing I would tell myself, and this kind of makes sense, go hand in hand, is focus on the task at that particular time. Do not have your mind in 20 different places. So focus and organization is the two things that I would slap myself in the face and tell to get it going.
Yeah, man, 100%. I 100% feel you on every single point there. It's like I'm hearing like flashbacks from like every school report I ever fucking had. It's you got all this drive, but like the direction's like a fucking hose pipe, and you're like, okay, let's just get this solid stream, and you'll go so much further.
Listen, an ambitious person can do very well as long as they're streamlined, right? An ambitious, like I'm super ambitious, and I think that and you can't learn that. I think that's something that's embedded in you. You know what I mean? Like I was born with that shit. So I needed to check myself on a daily basis and be like, man, that's not what we're here for.
Yeah.
I know you want to do this, but that's not what we're here for. And when I was focused, man, I was my most successful. No matter what I was doing, whether it be MMA, whether it be, doing a powerlifting meet, whether it be doing a fucking bodybuilding show, I did that shit too. That was crazy, right? I focused in on that for a solid amount of time and I was successful. It was when I had multiple things going on and I wasn't truly focused on the ultimate goal is where I was not successful. I dropped my first 3 pro fights. I lost because I was not focused and I didn't get the proper training because I opened up my gym like a year after I turned pro. So now I'm trying to build a business and I'm trying to build a very successful business. So now my focus is all over the place. I tell my fighters now, one of my guys who's at his peak right now, he just got a contract with the UFC. He wanted to start a fucking supplement company. I was like, bro, calm down. I was like, focus on what you're fucking great at right now.
Yeah. Get the fucking title and then all that shit can come in.
I think I need to strike when the iron's hot. I'm like, no. You need to fucking focus on that particular thing that's going to get you to the point where you can have fun with that at the end of the day, right? Because listen, you're not going to fight for the rest of your life. You're not going to be an athlete. You're not going to be a competitive athlete for the rest of your life. So you need to make sure that you have that sole fucking tunnel vision focus while you have the time to do so.
That's exactly it. It's the whole thing, man. Like, patience is a virtue, and it's like, sometimes you just want to go, but just holding back that little bit more, and like you said, striking when the iron's hot.
100%.
Man, you're just going to get so much more from it. But man, I tell you what, it's been an absolute goddamn fucking pleasure speaking with you today, man. I could listen to you talk all day long, man. It's really, really awesome, man. I do hope we can get you on here at some other point to chat, because I've got like 25 different show notes we haven't even fucking touched on yet, man.
It's all good. We'll do a part 2. No worries.
Hell yeah, 100%, man. Well, I hope you have a fucking awesome day, man.